What's up, everybody? Back with another Midwestern Marks live stream, extra special episode today. I think this is going to be one that you guys are interested in. We're going to get a real look into UK politics and the state of the left, and from a common perspective as ours, from a similar perspective as what we have with the American Communist Party and Midwestern Marks here in the United States. Obviously, Europe and Britain have a lot of the same problems that we do with their sort of impotent and identity politics obsessed left. So we're going to be giving an analysis of that today, talking about mass immigration, which is becoming a massive issue in the UK. And, even as recently as today, we had Elon Musk saying that a civil war in the United Kingdom is inevitable. So I think it's a perfect time for us to come out and talk about this. And I've got comrade Jesse Winney here with me, a great member of the British proletariat and communists, to break this down. So we'll get right into it after the introduction.
High Sheriff Hazard is a hard man to be. High Sheriff is his only plan. He digs through pockets, takes what he can, for he's High Sheriff Hazard. He caught me one evening, and here's what he said: "You look like a Russian, you look like a red, and if you're fond of your skin and your head, beware the High Sheriff of Hazard." The answer is simple, the answer is clear. We all get together, ain't got nothing to fear. We throw the old bastard right out on his ear. Farewell to High Sheriff Hazard.
All right, let's get right into it and not waste any time. Start picking Jesse's brain here and learn as much as we can about what's going on across the pond. So you and some of your comrades, Jesse, have identified some problems with the strategy of the British left, similar to the problems that we've noted in the American left here. So why don't you just give a general overview of those problems and what you see as wrong with the existing British left in the modern day?
Thank you, Eddie, and thank you for having me on. Absolutely. I think the main problem with the left is that you have a left wing that's totally divorced of class politics, and has this position of liberal universalism, and the only demographic that this left-wing politics really appeals to is the very demographic that is not going to be the agent of change in British society. You could see it also very much in the United States. So you and your comrades in America will know this all too well, that the left only appeals to a very small intellectual, campus-dwelling demographic. And we see this in our left as well. And the class actually occupies a much higher social stratum than where the left really needs to appeal to. And Lenin talks about this. Lenin talks about how communists need to go lower and deeper into the masses, and the left has absolutely failed to do this because they don't actually give a proper answer to the questions that are close to the heart of working class people. And in Britain especially, the big question is on immigration. And what the left have done is that they, and I'm sure we'll talk about more about this later, but the left have gaslighted the British people on immigration completely. You know, immigrants are not the problem. Immigrants are not the enemy. Whilst nominally that's true, a broken immigration system absolutely affects the British working class, and small communist sects in the United Kingdom suffer the same problem, but are even more pathetic and smaller.
Yeah, that's interesting to hear, especially connecting it, to parallels here in the United States. And with us, we've kind of tried to trace the history of this sort of impotent liberal leftism that seems to have even pervaded communist spaces. And a lot of it in the U.S. comes from the CIA, organizations like the Rockefeller Foundation, and various NGOs that have dumped money into leftists who are, what we call the compatible leftists who are leftist in name only, who claim to be the most radical, the most progressive, but tend to just virtue signal, and ultimately their politics uphold the system. But what do you think the historical roots of that are in the British left?
Well, it's quite interesting because you actually have to look at the new leftists that we see in Britain. And well, you have the new formations, which is your party. And although the Green Party have been around for many decades, actually, started off as the Ecology Party in Britain and now became the Green Party. But with the Ecology Party, or with your party, set up by Jeremy Corbyn, who's been a long time Labour member of Parliament in Britain, and by a relatively new member of Parliament, Zara Sultana, both Labour, by the way. They've set up this formation. It's been a total mess. I mean, it's a total theatre. They're all pursuing legal action against each other. It's crazy over disputes over like membership portals, just total bullshit. That have rendered different parts at their throats. And Zara's calling the Muslim MPs all a bunch of sexists, and so people have been quite turned off by that. So they've gone to the Green Party, and the Green Party have enjoyed a huge amount of success. But the interesting thing is that the new insurgent left leader of the Green Party, a man called Zach Polansky, he actually made a name for himself many years beforehand, and this was in the rise of Jeremy Corbyn, when Zach Polansky was actually part of the Liberal Democrats. And he said that he would never vote for Jeremy Corbyn because he was a Jew. An overt allusion to the complete myth that Jeremy Corbyn was in any way racist or anti-Semitic. This was just a slur used by the Israel lobby to punish Jeremy Corbyn for his support and solidarity for the Palestinian people who are now undergoing a genocide. So it's very ironic that Zach Polansky is now positioning himself to be a champion of the Palestinian people and a champion of Palestinian rights. So a lot of these new darlings of the left have very dubious pasts. It is very much rooted in Zionism. It's very much rooted in the huge operation to discredit Jeremy Corbyn during the 2017 and 2019 general election. If you want to go even further in the past, it's all rooted in the Labour Party. If you want to understand the history of the compatible left of Britain, it's all in the Labour Party. The Labour Party was established when you had proper Marxist organizations, that was started. Even Friedrich Engels was part of these organizations, but there was another one, the Social Democratic Federation, which was the strongest Marxist organization in Britain. And you had a few higher up craftsmen and people in guilds who established the Labour Party. But the difference with the Labour Party was that they voted to adopt a class conciliationist platform. And that set them on a trajectory to be a party of the ruling class, to subjugate the working class, and to actually hijack the trade union movement to make it a plaything of British capitalism.
Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like for every event in British political history, there's almost some kind of parallel in America. Even recently with this figure of Jeremy Corbyn, very similar to what we had with Bernie Sanders here in America, and then with the Democratic Party and the so-called Communist Party USA here in America under Roosevelt. They became completely conciliatory, and the Democrats in that way were basically able to hijack the trade unions. And it's so interesting how a real disciplined, non-opportunist Marxist-Leninist left is so obviously what's needed in both countries, but it's been so systematically suppressed. And I think it's interesting now as these contradictions are getting worse, and both the United States and Britain are in such a state of decay, facing so many different crises, whether they be immigration crises or otherwise. Now young people like us are turning to Marxism, Leninism, and really looking into the theoretical roots of leftist politics and calling out this opportunism. There was a recent poll that like 30% of Gen Z now in America has a positive view of Marxism and thinks it deserves consideration in America. People are kind of getting fed up with this social democratic opportunism, the likes of the Squad here in America, or your party in the UK. And I hope that's bringing about an opportunity for a real Marxist-Leninist left to come on the stage and take things over and take things in a positive direction. But do you see that as the way Britain is trending? Well, obviously, we're both Marxist-Leninists, so we're hopeful that that's the direction. But do you think the conditions are ripe for that?
Well, I must say, I'm particularly envious of America in that the fact that they have the ACP. And the ACP, no word of exaggeration, really is a panacea for me. I mean, there's no party in the Anglophone sphere like the ACP. I mean, it's completely broken the molds. Unfortunately, communist politics across the Anglosphere has just been stunted. It doesn't excite people. It doesn't animate the youth like a communist party should. Communist parties have degenerated into total boomer cults of gurus using it as playthings for self-aggrandizement. They don't know how to put young comrades to useful work. They don't know how to properly develop young comrades. They just build study group industrial complexes of completely repetitive activity with very little outreach. Lenin actually identified this problem in Marxist circles when he moved to St. Petersburg, and it was comrades of him described Lenin's intervention as like a lightning bolt. Lenin, shook some life into it, and he said, "We need to get out to the people. We need to be talking to the masses," and that's what I believe communists have totally lost in the Anglosphere. So when I look at the ACP on social media, actually doing proper work in the community, winning normal people over, to communist politics in action. Like that's what's needed. Because, you know, I was fortunate enough to campaign for George Galloway on several elections, and George Galloway, in my view, is absolutely right that the centre is dying, and in many ways it's dead. And it's a double-edged sword, because there's a tremendous opportunity for us Marxist Leninists, but that opportunity is only there if we get our act together. Because unfortunately, the alternative is very dangerous, and the fact that it's either us or it's the Nazis. That's really what the dichotomy is. You know, the youth are rejecting the centre system, and it could very much go into our favour, or it could go into something very, very dark indeed.
Absolutely. We're seeing the exact same thing in the US. Nick Fuentes and others gaining popularity. I mean, liberalism is being rejected across the board by the youth, and it's a question of where do they go. And you know, I appreciate your kind words about the ACP. I'm lucky enough to have other comrades who see things the same way that we do, and who have been able to galvanize a lot of, as you said, normal, regular people. And I hope that that's something that's coming all across the Western world, because like you said, something, it's when you're a young communist and you don't know that much, you always just kind of give reverence to communist parties across the world. And we have respect for all our fraternal communist parties in the Western world and outside of it. But once you get deeper into it and you get to see some of these parties up close and personal, you develop critiques of them. You see mistakes that they're making. And I think one of the things that we're trying to do, not saying that we have everything figured out, but we're trying to really go deeper and go to the masses and base our entire politics off of that, off of going to the working class and representing their interests, meeting their immediate needs. And there are these communist parties around the world who, maybe the people in them have a deep understanding of Marxism, Leninism, as far as the books, but they're not applying it. They're just reading. They're creating an insular bubble that, is gate kept, and people are kept out. They're not trying to bring people in. They're trying to keep people out. And it becomes like a cult. Really, you have a lot of cult communist parties, and they might say the right things, and because they have read all the slogans and read all the theory, but it's really like what Mao and Lenin talk about, where they just become book clubs. Like Mao, he had that famous quote, all reading and no practice creates just a bookshelf of a person. And that's one of the major flaws, I guess. What I'm getting at is that's one of the major flaws I see with certain communist parties around the world, where it just becomes, an insular group where we lecture people about how stupid they are because they don't understand Marxism, rather than taking the steps to teach regular people Marxism and break through the propaganda that they've been beaten over their heads with their entire lives. So, yeah, but I truly believe with the younger generation and the conditions that they're going through, that the conditions are ripe for a Marxist Leninist left, and I hope to see the same thing, a similar party to the ACP grow here soon in the UK.
Yeah, well, I mean, on that, I think you hit the nail on the head. People would read a book or a pamphlet like "What is to be done," and they don't understand that theory is a guide to action. It's not a manual on how to set up a printer. They'll read, Lenin said we should set up a newspaper. We need to set up a newspaper. Like, newspapers don't even print newspapers anymore. People don't read newspapers. That's just the facts of life. So, for God's sake, why are we out on the streets flogging newspapers at a quiet park or on the street when people are only, where you're going to be lucky if only a dozen or if 5 people. I was quite a good paper seller actually back in the day. I managed to sell 30 copies of a paper outside of a university campus, which in itself I thought was a massive achievement. But what did it actually achieve? Nothing. Think about how many people you can communicate with on online, right? Like my tweets aren't that good. Like, I mean, I don't have great content to put out, unlike the ACP that has like content of them going to the masses, actually doing stuff, meeting people's material need. But even if I just make a tweet with just writing, right, with 270 followers, as I've just counted myself, I've already reached 3,000 people who can read like a small tweet. So imagine what kind of reach you could have and how many people you communicate with that way. And not only that, but it's your deeds that make the best social media content. Like people go crazy when they see you guys out there, hosting barbecues, because you're creating the future that people want to see in their own communities. And if that can be replicated in as many different places as possible, that really is a spark that can light a fire, because that inspires other people that actually they have a lot of latent power and potential in themselves if they just get organized and take action as well. It's truly leading by example. I know communists talk against the idea of propaganda by the deed, but in this age of social media, it takes on a new meaning and is actually a very valid strategy, in my view.
I agree. It's something we've taken from the Chinese communists in a lot of ways, just going to the people and meeting their immediate needs, like not even trying to propagandize them ideologically right away, just meeting their needs. And once we develop those relationships and that trust, then we can talk about, ideology and communism and theory and, the more theoretically, or I mean, the more advanced ones in their consciousness, bring them into the party. And get them working together with us. But it's a slow process. But like you said, if we replicate that all across the country, and then we highlight what we're doing with social media work that reaches other people, and draws more people in, I mean, that's how we win. We just have to get enough people doing it and working hard and doing that hard work on the ground that communist parties have been so afraid to do for years now, unfortunately. And using technology, I mean, it's always been something that's rather intuitive to me. Like when I first became a communist, I was like, well, why don't I talk about this on TikTok? All of my friends are on TikTok. Why don't I just ramble about theory on here and see who watches it? And I did, and it turned out that a lot of people were interested. And the first, my whole goal was to turn as many people communist as possible, to educate as many people as possible. And the pushback I started running into from American leftists, mostly upper middle class or people or students, was that, well, I shouldn't be recruiting new people to the left because I might bring in reactionary people who are transphobic or whatever. So by recruiting people into the left, I was actually recruiting bad people into our safe spaces. And I was a bad white man, bringing other white men into the safe space. And at that point, I was a new communist. I'm like, what the hell is going on here? I'm like, is the goal not to bring new people in, to educate new people? But over time, it does, at least in America, seem like that kind of safe space, woke leftist ideology, and those kind of communities do actually seem to be dying. And even the left in America has come a long way since that time. But yeah, I mean, I've always looked at it like that Marx quote: "Capitalism creates its own gravediggers." The technological tools that we have at our fingertips today can be used to educate people and sow the seeds for socialism eventually. And I've seen you doing that too with your short video posts. I think those are great, and everybody should subscribe to your YouTube.
No, it's a hugely powerful tool, and I think you're absolutely right. I think the woke is dying. I think people are now waking up. I think woke is a fundamentally hysterical phenomenon, right? It's not really based on any reason. It's an overcorrection on real historical oppression that existed. but woke is just an emotional knee-jerk reaction. It's not an actual practical plan on how to undo and right historical wrongs. Now, woke is dying, and it's quite interesting because I'm actually seeing a media outlet called Novara Media, which is a left-wing liberal media outlet in the United Kingdom. Very woke, very woke. And I've seen a podcast of the Queen of Woke, a commentator in Novara Media called Ash Sarkar, who's even decried woke is dead. And she even wrote in the latest book the absurdity of how when you incorporate wokeism into your organizational function, it doesn't actually do the job of building power, but just preserving your own safe space. And I just wanted to know, who are you and what you've done with hashtag. I mean, they've just had a complete mental. They did a complete mental 180 and have completely gone against woke. So a part of me wants to scorn them for some sort of opportunism. You know, they know that woke is dying. They know that the residual effects of Trumpism is coming over to the UK, and that's going to do away with the woke. And now they're just getting onto this new grift. But I think a good communist in this circumstance would give them the benefit of a doubt and just say, you know what? Everybody is in a process of development, and this sea change should be something that is welcomed, even with people that we don't necessarily disagree with, because it's not just them changing their minds. It's a paradigm shift.
Yeah, I agree with you, actually. There was a conversation recently that a lot of Americans watched. It was Cenk Uygur and Hassan Piker. And Cenk Uygur was basically telling him how leftists were shooting themselves in the foot by being woke and not just being normal people. And he was kind of destroying Hassan in that debate because Hassan is still caught up on this wokeism, even though he's constantly getting canceled by his audience. But even him, I still like reach out my hand to him. And I'm like, dude, you wouldn't have to deal with all these woke leftists constantly nipping at your heels if you would just be a Marxist Leninist, if you would just listen to your uncle and be a normal guy, and not have to shove all these cultural issues down our throat all the time. But yeah, I mean, like you said, I think it's good, even though I don't agree with Cenk Uygur on pretty much anything. I think it's good because he has influence, and he's moving people away from this absolutely hysterical, almost like religious, dogmatic, virtue signaling based form of politics, if you even want to call it politics.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's good to see the paradigm is shifting, and it's shifting in our direction. We just like, but it's like what you guys are doing. We just need to be sufficiently organized for that purpose.
Absolutely. And another thing that's happening right now, another contradiction that's coming to a head, probably even more so over there than it is over here, although it's something that's affecting both countries, is mass immigration. Now, the liberal view, depending on the liberal that you talk to, but oftentimes it's very pro-immigrant. It's sort of a moral position of, how could you not care about these people who are fleeing disastrous situations to come to the US for a better life for their family, and they try to sort of individualize it and make it a moral thing. And then the conservative position is generally like the Tommy Robinson, Donald Trump position of let's scapegoat these people, blame them for all of the country's problems, be racist about it, and then ignore, some of the root causes of mass immigration, like imperialism, of course. So in your opinion, what is the sort of middle ground, or what is the sublated higher form, or more advanced position on this issue that communists should have when it's clearly a real crisis affecting both countries?
Well, communists should just realize that mass immigration is a big problem and actually call it out for what it is. It is a very big problem that is part and parcel of the capitalist imperialist system in which we live. I think communists straight away need to reject the idea of the liberal delusion of open borders, and celebrating mass immigration as some sort of positive phenomenon. They need to stop this very bizarre fetish of the destruction of the nation state. It just makes communists fall into this stereotype of the red boogeyman who wants to destroy family, community, culture, nation. You know, that's a total caricature that we should absolutely not fall into. And we shouldn't endorse national nihilism in any way. I think we should be proud, patriotic in the countries in which we belong. And we want the best for our countries as we want the best for the world. But communists absolutely need to be actively campaigning to stop mass immigration and stop the system of mass immigration. But we want to elevate consciousness. We need to make sure that people understand that mass immigration is a market-driven phenomenon. People are swarming into our countries because there is a business need for it. There is a financial demand for cheap labor to undercut the value of our labor and our bargaining power in trade unions. And communists who advocate for open borders are unfortunately playing into the hands of the super wealthy who benefit from the free movement of labor. When this is brought up to Marxist-Leninist parties, they just come back with quotes from Karl Marx saying, you know, white skins aren't going to be free until black skins are. Or I don't know how the quote's phrased, but it's really anti-racist quotes. I think we need to realize that Karl Marx wasn't writing in a time where we have passenger airlines, and that mass migration was not the phenomenon that it is today. And Marx was writing about racism and xenophobia. He was writing about the hostility of one nationality of workers against another, and how that division serves the capitalist class. But arguing against mass migration and arguing against open borders is not racism, it's not xenophobia. And that's something that we as communists need to make very clear. And not only that, but it's my view that mass migration only enhances racism and xenophobia. And it is making our countries more ethnically tense. And I know we're going to be talking about this a bit later, but Elon Musk was saying that the UK is on the verge of a civil war. Him and other right-wing commentators want that conflict to be an ethnic conflict because it serves their purposes. And ethnic conflict is only going to become more and more of a possibility when the contradictions exacerbated by mass migration. And for the sake of fraternity and brotherhood between different peoples, it needs to stop. We need to stop having a market-driven migration of people, and we need to establish a migration policy that's much more centered around the interests of the working class and the value of our labor. That's my position on immigration.
Yeah, it's a great position and a nuanced one. I mean, for people to use that Marx quote that labor in the white skin can never be free, wherein the black it is branded, to argue for open borders is wild. I mean, he was talking about chattel slavery at the time. He was talking about apartheid. He wasn't talking about capitalists importing thousands and thousands of impoverished people from countries that they've destroyed in order to use them for, extremely cheap labor in order to pay them poverty wages. I mean, Marx would have absolutely seen this trend of mass immigration as the result of capitalism and to the benefit of the capitalist class, because it is. Nobody benefits more from mass immigration than neoliberals and capitalists, because they can exploit these people. They can pay them extremely low wages because they're in a desperate situation, and undercut the wages of the domestic workers. So it greatly affects labor markets. And, there's sort of this liberal delusion, like trying to explain it away, like, well, immigrants are working hard, so therefore, we should just import as many as possible. It's like, well, yeah, they're working hard for almost nothing, and that's why the capitalist class wants such loose border restrictions, or wants to keep these H-1B visas, or whatever else. And that doesn't mean you fall into the xenophobia of the right wing and scapegoating immigrants for all of society's problems, but you point to the root causes of it, and then also the economic effects of it. Who benefits from this mass immigration? And also, let's look at where these people are coming from. The top places in the world refugees are fleeing from have all been destroyed by Western imperialism, whether it's Ukraine or Syria, or Venezuela. The places that people are coming out of are places under sanction, or dealing with, U.S. coups, U.S. wars, or U.S.-backed wars. And of course, the U.S.'s European allies are looped in on all of those. So, I couldn't agree with you more. And our position needs to be a nuanced one. And if you look at, diasporas historically, people who are in a colonized country, in a country that's under the boot of imperialism, always flee in mass to the country that's colonizing them, because you think that country's rich, that country's powerful, they're destroying my country. Why don't I go there where I'm going to be safer? So as long as the system of imperialism continues, people are going to continue to flee to the imperialist countries, where then, ironically, the imperialists like Donald Trump will scapegoat them for all of the country's problems. So I think it's good that you're striking a nuanced position on this. That's what we try to do in our party program as well, with our position on ending mass immigration and modern slavery. And what's the position of like your party? Because I know it's a huge crisis right now. Like we were saying earlier, everyone's talking about mass immigration in the United Kingdom. So what are Corbyn and Sultana and those folks saying about it?
It's just the same as the Green Party. It's open borders, safe passage into Britain, completely ignoring the genuine angst against mass immigration, not only by white British communities, but also immigrant communities. Because you need to look at Jamaican, Pakistani, Indian communities in Britain who've lived and worked in Britain for generations. They're born in this country. They have just as much stake as we as white people do for the future of our country and for the protection of our labor power and value of labor. I can't really say this because I wasn't actually born here. I was born in Dublin, in Ireland. I'm an Irish white worker. But still, I remember being a community organizer in Birmingham, and I was door knocking Asian communities, and they were complaining about immigration more vigorously than white areas that I've door knocked. So again, the problem is that the left are beholden to the irresponsible virtues of open borders and universalism and liberalism. And whilst they're building up very impressive memberships by youth who are disillusioned with the liberal system, they're still in some ways beholden to that old liberal system. So they have built impressive memberships. They are going places, but they're never going to win the majority of the British people with that line. They're just not. The Green Party is not going to win the majority of the British people with that line. Your party isn't going to win the majority of British people. So the problem I have is that whilst they've built quite substantial memberships, they're going to hit a ceiling, right? What party is the highest polling party in the United Kingdom? It's Reform. Reform under Nigel Farage, the party that's made immigration their core driving backbone of political policy making. That's what immigration is, what has propelled Reform at the height of the polls. You know, our nation has become a nation focused on its borders, on immigration. So the left really need to rethink this line of policy, because there's so much opportunity to attack Reform on. Reform have voted against renters' rights. Reform have voted against employees' rights. Nigel Farage's political role model is Margaret Thatcher, right? Reform are no friends of the working class, but yet the working class have such a substantial appetite for Reform's policies. I've knocked on doors, when I was campaigning for George Galloway, and we talk about Reform. And I said, look, I totally agree with you on immigration, and it needs to be restricted. But did you know that Reform have voted against the Employee Rights Bill to stop zero-hour contracts and to stop the criminal practice of fire and rehire? And they tell me these are just paid employees. They tell me, yeah, no, I don't really care about that. Like it's quite substantial, actually, how they're willing to toss away a lot of their rights and a lot of their working conditions solely on the basis of immigration. So if the left cock that issue up, they're really shooting themselves in the foot, actually.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more, and I think it's a similar thing in America. And I mean, this is kind of a side, but it's interesting that a lot of these open border leftists also tend to fetishize the global South and communists in the global South, and then you have communist parties in the global South, like in Chile or wherever else. They'll straight up say close the borders, like they'll use that as a slogan, what we would consider a right-wing slogan here in America. So, if you want to learn from communists in the global South, understand that they don't have this liberal open borders policy. They understand how immigration affects labor markets. They understand how big of an issue it can become, and how much it can divide and captivate the people's attention. And I mean, I think that's happened now thoroughly, especially in the UK. As you said, everybody's attention is focused on this issue. Everybody's, there's been a lot of fear mongering about this issue, trying to whip up an actual race war, as you were highlighting earlier. And now they're looking to pass this digital ID law, where British citizens would have to carry around a digital ID on their phone to prove that they're citizens in order to work and whatever else. And it's supposed to curb mass immigration. So, what do you think of this law? And do you see any downsides? Are they implementing it to push mass surveillance and things like that? Just give your general analysis.
Oh, it's totally just mass surveillance on us. It's got nothing, I want to make this clear, it's got nothing to do with illegal immigration at all. I mean, but what I'm actually very pleased about is that the British people overwhelmingly reject this measure. I mean, the petition, and very few people sign petitions these days, but the petition has already approached nearly 3 million people. And there's lots of different great things that have come about through the resistance to digital ID. But let's just start with the topic of illegal immigration. It's got nothing to do with illegal immigration, because digital ID depends on official government databases. So how is digital ID meant to be picking up any illegal immigrants? Illegal immigrants don't register for right to rent or right to work. An illegal immigrant would come here, a dodgy landlord would put them up, and then just register themselves as living in the property. Illegal immigrants would get work in car washes, nail salons, warehouses, cash in hand. None of that would appear, and thus digital ID would not impact that one job. So it's not about watching illegal immigrants, it's about watching us. And Prime Minister Keir Starmer visited India, and he talked about digital ID. And he already let the cat out the bag that digital ID will enable the government to see where we're spending our money, our consumer habits. You know, people are already making TikToks in the UK because in a lot of restaurants, they'd have a policy of you can have free refills on your Coke. Guys, don't get free refills on your Coke. You know, stop drinking that shit. That's what I say. But I will at least say you have a right to drink that shit. You know, my favorite sort of pub chain, Weatherspoons, you can go up and get free refills on your hot chocolate or mocha. But, new legislation says that you can't do that anymore. So the UK government is already in a habit of policing our consumption choices. And what digital ID looks to be doing is to extend the government's control over our consumption choices. And it's not just what digital ID is proposing now, but what it could lead to in the future. It alters our relationship with the state completely. We in Britain, we've only had mandatory identification on 2 occasions, and that was World War I and World War II. That's an emergency measure, really. But what I'm really pleased to see is that there's huge resistance to it. And not only that, but if you take, say, the most right-wing MP in Parliament, a man called Rupert Lowe. Yeah, he was originally elected as a Reform member of Parliament, but he fell out with Farage. He's now independent, and some of his tweets are even are a lot tastier than what you'd get from the rest of Reform. Like, he's a very outspoken right winger. And then you have another MP, a man called Ayub Khan, who's a Muslim MP elected in Birmingham primarily on the Gaza ticket. And they actually came together to sign a letter opposing digital ID. So you could literally imagine you get the 2 very different poles on the political spectrum in Parliament, and they've come together on this issue, which I think is absolutely beautiful, because we need to galvanize their base, pissed off white working class people who go on Tommy Robinson marches, as well as pissed off Muslims who go on Palestine marches. Like, could you imagine what kind of, they're usually at loggerheads on the streets of London when they get coached in. But could you imagine what kind of force we'd have if they came together on that issue, and what kind of a precedence that it would set, where they put aside the ethnic strife and actually develop a form of class consciousness that actually, whilst they may be very different demographically, they're very much the same in terms of their class interests. And the most immediate aims of our class interests is defending our civil liberties, because we cannot hope to fight to improve our pay and conditions at work if we don't have civil liberties, and if the government have endless control over us, endless surveillance powers over us, because that would have detrimental effects to the trade union movement. You look at the Orgrave inquiry and several other instances where the government have totally repressed trade unions. Digital ID will only exacerbate that. So I'm really, really pleased to see the resistance to it. It's really relighting my hope and faith in the British people and our ability to come together against tyranny.
Yeah, that's great to see that unity. I completely agree with you on fighting for existing civil liberties within the liberal capitalist system. I've made similar videos actually using the UK and different arrests and crackdowns on speech that we've seen over there to tell Americans, like, we should fight for the First Amendment and the right to free speech, even though, supporting the Constitution and defending the Constitution is usually associated with the right in our country. It's like whatever civil liberties and protections that we currently have probably had to have been fought for in the past, and we should continue to fight for them today, especially if they have the potential to unify people like that. Which is great to see. It kind of reminds me when you talked about the furthest right, member of parliament coming together with a Muslim member, reminded me of Marjorie Taylor Greene in the United States pushing this bill to defund Israel, which is so crazy. The situation we're in now, where you have like AOC and the squad leftists voting for Iron Dome funding and voting against Marjorie Taylor Greene's bill to defund Israel. And then you have who was considered the furthest right member of the U.S. government coming out against Israel and actually taking the furthest left position. So it's such an upside down situation. But I mean, the way to unify this situation and make sense of it is, of course, unity by class. Of course, the whole system is designed to keep working class people at each other's throats over ethnic differences or, whatever differences of opinion they have on social, cultural issues. But what really needs to happen is unity based on class and a fight for the most basic things that we all have in common. Right to fair employment, more time off, pension funds, healthcare, education, more roads, all these things that come along with socialism, with a dictatorship of the working class.
Well, absolutely. I mean, and I think that's the problem with a lot of communists and leftists, is that we're so far off that place where we need to be, which is unity on the basis of class and the demands for more working class power, real class consciousness, where actually workers are concerned about rebuilding the trade unions and are concerned about fighting for better pay and better conditions at work. Because like workers don't even struggle for those things. Not in this. I mean, only a minority do. So what are the majority doing? And unfortunately, we are just so far off that point that a lot of us communists and leftists, we don't even know where to start, and we get confused and so I think we're just all a bit lost, unfortunately. But I think that at the very least, unifying with whoever wants to maintain and expand our civil liberties, our autonomy, is a good place to start, because that is what people, regardless of your skin color, that is what people care about. And equally on mass immigration as well. I think people call it a divisive issue. I actually think it's quite a unifying issue, because it's impacting the whole nation, regardless of what color what color skin you are, what God you pray to or don't pray to. Those are issues that we do need to bring people together on, and that is that is at least a start by which you can then get onto more class-based unity and class consciousness.
Couldn't agree more. I appreciate your time today and going over all these issues. I'm going to answer the super chats quick here, but is there anything else you wanted to talk about specifically, or any topics that we missed?
No, not off the top of my head. I mean, I'm hearing a lot from Zora Mamdani. He looks like he's making, he's got a lot of popularity, making a lot of noise. But again, I'm already seeing him call Nicolas Maduro a dictator, which I find very strange, as Venezuela is literally under siege. But I'm following events in Venezuela quite closely. I mean, I had the privilege of meeting your comrade Chris Halali, who I know is in who was in Venezuela for a bit. And I was also very excited to hear Maduro announce the launch of international brigades, very much like what we saw in Spain in the Spanish Civil War, to fight fascism in Spain. And now it looks like the Venezuelans are gearing up to fight fascism in their own country. So I don't know, how do you go about setting up an international brigade?
It's a good question. It's one that you know, it gets into interesting legal territory there too. I mean, it'd be very dangerous for people outside of Venezuela in the United States, at least, to be a part of anything like that. But to see, and Venezuela's always had that sort of internationalist bent to their revolution there. They even, I don't like this that much, but they talk about Trotsky sometimes and permanent revolution. But the whole idea is we want to spread this revolution across Latin America. We want to unify our entire continent and fulfill Bolivar's vision. So I think this idea of international brigades as they're under direct siege from the United States goes right along with the sort of ethos of their revolution there, the Bolivarian revolution. So it'll be interesting to see how that develops. I have more that I could say about it, but maybe that's a conversation for off camera sometime.
Indeed. Well,
But yeah.
Galloway, George Galloway, I recall, said that a war against Venezuela would unite the Latin American continent against for a war against imperialism. But we shall see. But Eddie, I just want to say thanks so much for your time, and thanks so much for having me on the show. It's been a really good conversation, and I look forward to having many more.
Absolutely. I appreciate you for coming on, man. You want to tell people where they can find you before we split?
Sure. So I'm quite excited to say that I am working with my comrades on launching a new media project by the end of this week. So the launch will be out for that. So keep your eyes peeled. But the best way to hear about that is follow me on social media. On Twitter, I'm literally Jesse Winney. Twitter, Instagram. I mean, Jesse Winney isn't that much of a common name, so you should be able to find me quite quickly. So yeah, guys, reach out, follow me. It'll be lovely to have you follow me and make contact. God bless.
Absolutely. Thank you for your time, Jess. We appreciate it.
Thank you, comrades.
All right. I'll just read the super chats here real quick before we wrap. That was great. Shout out to Jesse. Make sure you follow him on everything. Really sharp, young comrade. It's encouraging to see people like him in the United Kingdom. I've been making contact with a lot of British comrades lately who are of a similar mind to Jesse. So, let's just hope that they can have a similar movement to the ACP and give people sort of a central hub to get organized. Because in the U.S., ever since we started the ACP, it's easy for us now. It was very confusing, as Jesse was talking about there at the end. It was very confusing to be a communist or a leftist when I joined the left, quote unquote left, in 2019 or 2020. Didn't know the best place to put our energy. I was a Marxist-Leninist, but I didn't see any Marxist-Leninist political parties. But now we have one in the United States, and we can get you plugged in and organizing your community like that. The day that you join, we'll get you working hard, doing regular, basic Marxist-Leninist work, Marxist-Leninist organizing work. And there hasn't been that kind of party in the U.S. for a while. And I know for sure that something similar will emerge in the UK sooner rather than later. Thank you, Slumbering Colossus. Glad to see you're both on our sides, brothers. Need more like you. I need to find a local ACP in Columbus, Ohio. There is an ACP Ohio chapter, brother. You got to join the party at acp.us, and we will get you plugged in with the Ohio chapter and getting to work in your community and local workplaces immediately. Porcupine Girl, thank you for the $1 super chat. Appreciate it. Or super sticker. Actually, that's £1. Got a British Porcupine Girl. Corvid Conquest, member for 11 months. Thank you, brother. If the capitalist class, sorry, I should have asked Jesse this question. My bad. If the capitalist class takes an opportunistic view on immigration for cheap labor, is it practical to discuss methods for organizing among immigrants? I think so, yes, because it's good to have connections with any sections of the proletariat. And there are specific immigrant organizers who can connect you with communities of immigrant workers. But ultimately, if the country breaks down into a civil war, a revolutionary war, I think a lot of the immigrants will just split. I think they'll just leave back to their home countries. So there's that to consider as well. Thank you, Corvid. Venezuela can be the green Libya of the Americas. How so? Hopefully it won't be Libya and that it collapses. But hopefully it will be Libya and that it's a based socialist country. Thank you, back from the road. Whoa, $50 from Ja. Thank you, Ja. Holy cow. That is a big W. Huge super chat. Thank you, brother. Extremely generous. I feel like I should give half of that super chat to Jesse, right? If he gave me $50 after a conversation with him, I feel like he should get 25. Well, YouTube's gonna take 20 out of that. Gonna take whatever percentage that they take. But thank you very much, Josh. Super generous. Really appreciate you guys. You could probably tell I'm a little bit tired today. I didn't have full energy, unfortunately, for our comrade Jesse, but this is my first stream in a while too. I feel rusty. It's been like a month since I've been on chatting with you guys. I apologize for that. I've been traveling all over America, tabling with the American Communist Party, talking to the youth of America about communism, debating TPUSA people in real life at tables. The TPUSA table I went to the other day, they were talking about transgender sports and transgenderism, and should biological males compete in women's sports and stuff. And they had a baseball and a speed gun to measure the speed of the baseball, and they're having men and women throw the baseball and then measuring their totals, and they're like, see, men are stronger. And it was so stupid, but I'm like, this is kind of smart, like a genius gimmick. Like, I was thinking, I'm like, what kind of gimmick can we come up with for the ACP to get people to come over to our table? Like, people are way more likely to come over and chat if you let them throw a baseball. But we got to talk to a lot of people anyways, especially at Iowa State. I'd like to go back there. That was where I felt like we had the best conversations and got the most recruiting done. But yeah, I miss your streams, man. I'm back, man. I'll be back from now on. It'll probably be moving to weekends soon because I'm doing a practice on Wednesdays now. So look forward to weekend streams soon. I'll be back. Started taking magnesium. Good. I took 3 before this interview. Everyone should take magnesium. 50% of Americans are magnesium deficient because of our diets. Please, my friends, take magnesium. Magnesium deficiency causes anxiety and depression, and half of our country is magnesium deficient. So what does that tell you? Please take it. Don't take weird supplements that roided out fitness influencers try to sell you. Take magnesium so you can be actually healthy. Thank you, back from the road. Another $5 super chat. Thank you, brother. Eddie, the foothold for Pan-American movement based on resource management that enriches the population and supports other American movement. Oh, I see. Yeah, like an internationalist. Yeah, because I didn't make the connection there, but yeah, Libya and Gaddafi were Pan-Africanist. They wanted to unite the continent financially, economically. And they took strides to do so, similar to Traore in Burkina Faso right now. So now I see what you're saying. Thank you. Marxism, Leninism, magnesiumism. Damn right. Uncolonize the Western mind. We're working on it. Thank you, Andre Sig. Appreciate you. $19 and a channel member. Let's go. That's very generous. Appreciate you, brother. We're working on it. It's a battle. There's many battlegrounds of struggle, and probably the most important battleground is the battle for the people's minds. We're beat over the head with so much propaganda, not only in the news media, but the entertainment media. A lot of people get their ideas about the DPRK, North Korea, and foreign countries like Russia from movies and from TV shows and from comic books and entertainment media. And that's why the State Department and, you know, the ruling class spend so much money and effort to try and control entertainment media. And you might think it sounds like tinfoil hat conspiracy theory, but read Michael Parenti's Make Believe Media. A small group of people controls almost everything that you see, whether it's meant to be entertaining or informative. Try Kick. It could be dope. They only take 5% of your cut. Yeah, I don't know, maybe, but that would be it would be a lot to switch right now, and Haas obviously kills it on Kick. So like I feel like it makes more sense for us to all hit different platforms. Like that's why I focus so heavily on TikTok, because I kind of, you know, have the biggest audience there of any of the platforms, and we want to, you know, get ACP's message to every single platform. And I feel like Kick is Haas's territory, but yeah, it could be worth it for the donos. If you want to only get 5% of your money taken, patreon.com/MidwesternMarks. They only take 5%. So thank you though. Try Kick. It could be dope. Yeah. Appreciate the super chat. L-theanine is great for stress and anxiety too. Yeah, absolutely. TikTok doesn't save your streams though. It does. It saves them for a little bit, and then you can download them and re-upload them. So I've done that a couple times. Now, especially now that I have a new phone. All right, y'all. I gotta go to sleep. I'm exhausted. This was an awesome stream with a bunch of super chats. Thank you very much. Thank you to Jesse Winney. Please follow him on everything. Appreciate you guys a ton. We'll catch you on the next one.